so much advice about money in the world. It can be really confusing. But on this episode, we're doing something a little bit different. We're distilling 20 years of financial advice into just 5 money lessons that we reckon you need to know. That's today on Money and a Good Life. My name's Stephanie Coombs, and I'm here with a person who has a few money lessons under his belt. Of course, it's my co-host, Ryan Watson. Hey, Ryan.
Hi, Steph.
You know, we haven't really covered how you ended up in financial advice. So how'd you get here?
Yeah, great question. So I was never a big one for school or putting in a lot of work. I was reminded by my family the other day that I did just what was necessary to get a pass. So I did that. Then got into university. So got into commerce, like what you do when you're not sure what you want to do. Finished that. I think I was 6 months over, but that's okay. We got there 4.5 years. And then took a job in Melbourne at the Mercer Super Trust. So always liked the financial aspects, was decent enough with money and understood numbers. And then I thought, you know, working for a superannuation fund, the key was if I could help people make money and understand their relationship with money, then I'd probably be good with it myself. So that's what led me there to do a postgrad in all things financial advice.
Surprises me. I would have picked you as a nerd.
Yeah, no. Thanks, Steph.
Clearly not. All right. Well, so you ended up obviously in this wonderful world. You've started your own company. Mm-hmm. You've got a wonderful group of people working with you. Along the way, you've obviously learnt a few lessons, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about. We've managed to get you down to just 5, which was a bit of an ask.
Yeah, 5 in 20 years, as you
5
reminded.
in 20 years.
Even thinking about the 20 years, geez, it's gone quickly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It does. Things speed up. So what's your first one?
Yeah, the key to having a better relationship with money, in my opinion, is just simply running your own financial race without judgment or opinion. You know, we're in a world where we're told what we should think and what we should do, whether that's news or the advent of social media. What we know with clients that we work with who have a really positive relationship with money is that they know what's important to them. They've sorted out their own, whatever that household or family unit looks like, they've sorted out what their short, medium and long-term goals are. So they are running their own race. We used to call it keeping up with the Joneses, but these days it's keeping up with the Kardashians. So we encourage our clients and people not to worry so much about that. Build the foundations of the life that they want, both personally and professionally, and then live to those. That means you block out naturally a lot of the outside noise, cars, houses, holidays, and you intrinsically understand what's really important to you as a person and as a family. And that's where we find people really living their good life. In
20 years, have you found that more recently people are a bit more obsessed with what others are doing? I mean, we didn't used to be in each other's lives as much as we are now. Like I'd see my friends at a cafe, but now I see what they're driving. I see what the inside of their house looks like. I see how their renovations are going, their holidays. Has that been reflected for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's gone in 2 distinct directions. So during and then post-COVID, I think there's a cohort of people that have really just stripped it back and identified what's important to them. Who are they? What does that family unit look like? Where do they want to live? Where do they want to work? How much do they want to work? So they're really in tune with that, and they've just got rid of those constraints of society. And then you've probably got another cohort that's gone further down that rabbit hole. There's more time, more social media, more access to phone and internet, and they've probably been never more worried about what other people are doing. And they're really trying to keep up with those Kardashians.
Well, I was reading the other day that there's this whole economy in Los Angeles where if you want to appear to be rich, and there's so much to be gained on social media if you look like you're rich, you can sell your programs, you can sell, your wealth strategies or whatever. But they're hiring their private jets, they're hiring their luxury cars, they're hiring their mansions, they're hiring their beautiful apartments with city views. And you rent them by the hour, get a bunch of content, and then you move off and some other influencers and the same thing.
I didn't know about that, Steph, and it might surprise you. I'm not a massive social media person. Probably LinkedIn's my vice, like if there was a social media platform, if that is even a social media platform. And obviously, having been in the financial advice industry for 20 years, having run my own financial planning firm for about 18 of those, we know that it's often not as it appears, or all is not as it seems when it comes to the financial. Again, and I continue to say without judgment or opinion, it's just what you see. You know, we serve a lot of families where we are at Tribeca, and every people or family unit has different priorities. It's often the ones that everyone thinks are doing really well that have the same stresses, if not more, when it comes to money.
So you have to run your own race, because you might be looking at someone else in the lane next to you thinking that they're doing something completely different, but you don't know their situation as well. So like there's no point looking to see if the grass is greener somewhere else. You actually just have to bring that focus right back in.
Exactly. And it might be that they're purporting or looking like they are doing really well financially or otherwise, but it also might be that they are really successful and doing well. But if you're concentrated invariably on what somebody else is doing, how can you ever be happy? Because it's not what's really important to you, and it's not the life that you want to live.
Well, the man who owned IKEA, I believe, used to fly economy. Never bought a business flight. Didn't think that it was worth with the cash. So if you were sitting next to him in economy, you'd probably be like, oh, he's just a plugger like me, not knowing that he was one of the richer people in the world.
I love that. Not to digress too much, Steph, but I did see in the news on the weekend, the Singapore Prime Minister as well flies commercial.
Yeah, no, if I were rich, the first thing that would go would be economy.
Yeah.
Gone.
What do you think you'd do? Business, or you go straight to first?
I want to be in the part of the plane where everybody who is in economy has to file past you.
Okay.
There's been 1 or 2 times that I've managed to get a business class flight on points, which is great. And the best part is you're sitting in a reclining chair, someone's about to hand you a sparkling wine, and everybody who's in economy who's going to be sitting upright, which is usually me 99.99% of the time. But that point where everybody walks past you and you're just eyeballing them, that's the best part.
That's your thing.
That's my thing.
I like it. Well, just to share a little...
That's my good life.
I like it. Just to share a little one on first class. I've never flown that myself, business a couple times. But first class, we had some clients come back from overseas, and they might have flown Emirates, it doesn't matter. But they got back and they said they would never fly first class again. The jet lag was horrible because they slept on the flight. They slept so well, it was terrible. They were adamant, and they have financial means beyond. They would never fly first.
Look, it was bad for me, but it was because I had a hangover the next day. So the jet lag was bad because I had,
self-indulgent.
Yeah, self-indulgent. But you got to get your points worth. I'd like to say money, but I'm certainly not buying it. So anyway, we'll move on. What's your next tip? Lesson number 2.
It's never too late to understand your relationship with money. Practice some self-compassion, and from that point, change potentially what that relationship is. I think, we're so hard, that internal narrative that we have around that voice with ourselves around what we do well. Probably don't recognise that very well, and then we're very hard on ourselves and what we deem we don't do very well at all, particularly when it comes to money. So consciously understanding the relationship that we have with money and just taking it for what it is, and then choosing if we want to create some change. And if there is discomfort around the relationship we have, sit in it, because that's where we can create the growth and change, as opposed to just ignoring it or quickly trying to move on. I am really quite guilty of this. I think that if I'm not thinking about it, I just prefer not to think about it, because I'm worried that if I look at it, I might find some numbers that I find, embarrassing, or I don't look at my home loan too much, because I'm worried on some level that I'll find something that I should have done 5 years ago. But I know that it's madness, because I could be making decisions today that will actually... I'll be grateful for 5 years down the track. It's interesting, Steph. So you say madness, right? There's probably, by not dealing with it in the moment, there's probably some self-preservation in that as well, right? Yeah. Potentially, and not pointing the finger at you. For those listening out there, potentially those people who do get that bill and there is a visceral or there is an emotion attached to it, just sitting with it and understanding why. What does it mean? It's not good. It's not bad. It is what it is, dare we say. And with that, unwrapping it or understanding, and then potentially changing your internal narrative around that.
But we don't really talk about money. It's why you need sometimes an outside perspective to come in and say, hey, wait a second,
I wish Australians talked more about money. I don't know whether it is the tall poppy piece or we just feel uncomfortable. I think, why do Australians not celebrate when they pay off a mortgage or their family home? Why is there not a party for that? As weird as that might sound, where my brain goes to sometimes, Steph. But I thought, why wouldn't we celebrate that for somebody?
Well, in my case, it's going to be because I'm too old to celebrate. I'll be,
Or perhaps that's the story you're telling yourself, Steph, and there's work to be done.
Maybe it is. Maybe it
there's
is.
work to be done.
Yeah. That's a long time to wait for a party, I think, for me.
Yeah. Well, maybe there are milestones along the way where we just create. But in terms of, the overarching point of why don't we talk about, because I'm a massive one for a problem shared is a problem halved, right? And we always feel better when we get it off our chest. It's like a fart. It's better out than in.
Well, this is a pretty small room, so I'm going to question you on that one. Maybe once we're out of the podcast studio, sure. I've got a friend who I'm actually quite open with money about because she's also a freelancer.
Okay.
So she does a little bit of work in the creative fields, and I found it really good that, sometimes in freelancing, as I'm sure you're aware, you've got a lot of work and then you've got not much work. But because we're both really open about the ebbs and flows of our own financial situation and that we're, sharing when things are good as well as they're bad, it does release some of that pressure of just feeling like you're the only person. But then when you talk to other freelancers, it's like, oh no, that is just the rhythm. The work has its own rhythm.
And it's almost like it takes a while to calibrate to that cycle.
Yeah.
In terms of understanding. But there is discomfort that comes from the start. Like you said, the ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And you come to understand that that's just the way it works.
And just talking to someone about it is really good because it means that you can, again, sharing that problem or sharing your information. So I agree with you. I think that talking to people about money and your situation, trying to make that less taboo.
And it's interesting, if I reflect on conversations that I have around money with, say, my good mates, like a lot of people I went to high school, we don't really talk about money. They're all quite successful trade or tertiary qualified in their own right, but we don't really talk about it. We have one friend that does, if he has a few drinks and he talks about success and he quickly gets shot down. Maybe it's a little bit of that tall poppy piece, but as a rule, everyone's doing well, but no one really talks about it.
I think for women in particular, it's important. In my workplaces, I've always been really honest about my salary. When I've done that, it's really interesting because we quickly work out where the discrepancies are.
Yeah.
And I've got friends who are in other industries, and I'll say to them, like, I'll ask them or I'll volunteer what I'm making. And then these conversations have brought their salaries up because when I'm like, nah, you are being underpaid or you're worth that much more or you've been working that job for how long? It's like, well, you should have been, if you moved industries, you'd be doing, that has actually brought all of us up.
And I love that, Steph. So, without getting too much of the mechanics around advice, but when we talk about cash flow as opposed to budgeting, because budgeting generally has a negative connotation, there's two levers when it comes to cash flow.
Yeah.
One being expenses, how much can they cut? But the income one, and it relates back to understanding what people or what they're worth and how do they find that? Whether it's through recruiters or looking at the market, and then it's building the confidence or how do they structure the relationship or the conversation, I should say, with their boss to, within reason, go and fight for what's fair or where their value is to potentially increase your salary by $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a year. But a lot of people forget that income lever.
Yeah. And I think that people are, again, so awkward about money conversations that they just prefer not to talk about it, which I understand. Look, we've got 3 more tips to go through. So what's number 3? What's your number 3 money lesson?
Big one, and I know the tribe at Tribeca, they love it when I say this. I'm a big one for structure creates freedom. So like anything in your life, if you create the right habits, things tend to work pretty well. So we're all about building the right type of financial habits, obviously understanding where you want to go and what your goals are. And then, life's relatively busy. Everyone's pretty time poor. Put the right structure in place. You practice those right habits. When life gets hard, the financial habits actually do a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
And there's choice overload, right? Like you're making so many decisions in a day, so many decisions. Like better to make one decision, beginning of your month, where your money's going, where it is, what your expenses are, and then just not think about it.
Exactly right. Because to think that somebody can, on a weekly basis, say, actively manage a budgeting spreadsheet or transfer money between accounts, it all gets busy. We know on our first podcast, we talked about cash flow hacks and, I disclosed what was in my bank account that day. And we talk about, how do we get that pocket money or it's transferred across to an independent account on a weekly basis. And then when the money's there, the money's there. I think today, for those playing along at home, I've got about $17 in my account to last till Thursday. Going to be a lean week and no lunch is not on me today,
Oh,
Steph.
that's a shame. That's bad news for me. That's a real bad sign. The only time, for example, that I've managed to stick to a gym routine is when I have a program that's been completely laid out for me. And all I have to do is go to the gym, do the lifts that I've been told to do. They incrementally get heavier and there's no thinking involved.
I reckon
that's how it works.
I think that's the operative word. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
It just, the habit drives the behaviour.
Yeah.
Less thought, just more practical action.
Yeah, because if all I have to do is put on my clothes and walk to the gym, then I'm going to get there. But if I also had to, plan what I was going to do, make decisions, look at the weights, try and remember what I was doing, it never happened. It never happened.
And if we bring that to money, right? Oh, well, I'm buying lunch today or I'm going out for dinner or I want to buy that. Is it coming from a savings account, an offset account, a credit card account? We know it's easier. Psychologically, we know it's a lot easier to spend from credit card. You're making these choices. It's just a recipe for overspend.
Yeah. So what's your number 4 tip?
More money doesn't lead to more happiness. In what we do in the day-to-day, we often see people, or we have people come to us that earn well above, the average Australian income. It could be in the multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to $500,000 to $1 million. And a lot of the time it's more money, more problems. Work has significant demands. They earn more money and therefore they fall into this spend cycle and it just continues to rinse, lather and repeat. So for us, it's not more money. It means more happiness. It's understanding what money can do for you, putting yourself in charge of that money and allowing it to work for you.
It's funny that you obviously deal with so many people, right? And talk about their finances and you'd have a pretty intimate knowledge of people's relationship and their happiness with cash. So you hear that money isn't the key to happiness and you're like, well, I don't know if I believe that because I haven't had a huge amount of money, so I can't. But it's good to hear from someone who's actually in a position to make that call.
Yeah.
And you can say you have spoken to people who have a huge amount of money or have more than your average person. You've talked to people, I imagine, who are less well off. And you can actually say that you have found no correlation.
Yeah, and we work with a diverse group of clients. So we work with people who first time married to what we call wealth accumulators or married with a couple of kids or anywhere in between to your pre-retirees and your retirees. And if I talk to, people who are now retired, they're generally not the ones that have had, the most significant income or the biggest career. It's been calm, consistent, good income. They've understood what they spend. But more importantly, and again, whatever that family unit looks like, they've understood what's important to them. They've understood whether it is the overseas holiday every year or it's the living legacy conversation with their kids and they want to help them provide for secondary school, private school or potentially university. Or, you know what? It's buying the four-wheel drive on the first day of retirement, hitching a caravan to it and travelling around Australia, and they might not have a significant superannuation balance. It's more about your relationship with money than it is more money.
Yeah, we want to hear that, but I don't know if that was just something that was supposed to, appease the likes of me, but I'm glad to hear it from you because I do believe you. What's your final money lesson?
We're a big one on the tortoise versus the hare, and stay with me here, Steph.
Okay. I feel like I've heard this one before.
Yeah. No surprises then. The tortoise wins the race.
What?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
I know. It's not the next big thing. It's not Bitcoin. It's not crypto. It's not the sixth investment property. Slow and steady wins the race. Again, we go back to the habits of building the right financial muscle that over time allows people to accumulate. And don't worry, we're not going down this path of compound interest again. It's okay, Steph. We're not going to go there, all right?
If I had $1, then I wouldn't need your advice for every time you spoke about compound interest.
We all geek out on certain things,
yeah, right? I know, yeah.
So, for us, it is always the tortoise that wins. It's not the sugarhead when it comes to financials. But we know that the satisfaction and the gratitude comes from some sense of personal discipline, building the right habits and building it yourself on a consistent basis.
How quickly can people turn around their financial situation?
Quicker than they actually think. The key for us, when we work with people is understanding or owning, in inverted commas, where they are now, and then the willingness to, delegate to a trusted source like a financial advisor, listen to the guidance, and then be willing to do some of the work themselves and create some change. So there's just going to be small incremental change to start with. But again, over the journey, it creates a significant difference to someone's financial life.
I've heard before, and I might be butchering this, that people tend to overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 5.
Absolutely. In terms of the the 12 months, depending on where people want to start, but that slow change. And that's the thing around looking for the sugar hit. But, we've had clients on a journey come to us, and if I think 5 years ago, where they are now, it's a really rewarding experience for them, but as well as us. We find we work in a goal-setting framework that generally looks at where people want to be in 10 years, then in 3, and then what effective change they want to create now. We often find people build that financial muscle or that confidence, and they start to bring forward those goals, or they start to really embrace the challenge for themselves about what they want to do. The key is to find that financial confidence is starting with the courage, and then you'll go to a stage of coping. And then on the other side of that is financial confidence, which is real freedom, and people are in charge of their money at that stage.
How do people feel when they hit 3 years and they can see that they've made big differences and that their life is starting to get closer to what they want?
It might sound like a cliche, Steph, but they walk taller and they sleep better. We talk to financial wellbeing, the key tenements being security and freedom of choice. They talk to us on the qualitative side, the medium to long term, around just the sleep at night factor and that heightened sense of security, freedom of choice, and they're not constrained anymore. And they understand what's truly important to them, found some financial happiness.
Like, is there someone who stands out in particular, a group or a client at some point who's come through Tribeca that you've really seen change their life or the way that they deal with cash?
Yeah, like I said, we genuinely, we're pretty open to who we work with. We like the diversity of that. We really look through a lens of how do people see the world. So we want them to have a growth mindset. They want to be inspired, educated and supported. And they've got some financial means, whether that's an income or to invest. Where we find some of the most enjoyment are, unfortunately, people have been through a relationship breakdown. So it might be separation or divorce. And it's potentially the partner in the couple that didn't look after the money in the relationship. And they've come out and they want to start again. And they're willing to learn, and they're willing to trust, and they're willing to, be the tortoise, as it will. So, they take on that, and where they can get to and the life that they can live and the travel and what they find is truly important to them. That's what we got into financial advice for.
And it's never too late.
It's never too late. No, we'll see people, say if they're in their 40s and they might say, I wish I saw you 5 or 10 years ago. We'll see people in their 70s and said, I wish we saw you 5 or 10 years ago. And then we'll say, well, but you're not seeing us 10 years in advance. You're not seeing us at 81, you're seeing us at 71. So it's never too late.
It's funny because, I'm in my mid-30s and I'm feeling, I should have gotten a hold of this 10 years ago. When I was 25, I think I was probably still spending most of my money on booze. So I don't know what you would have told me then.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and it's obviously not for this podcast, but what would 45-year-old Steph say to herself?
Yeah, good question. I hope keep going. You're doing great.
Keep on trucking.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you'll get it together at some point. Yeah. All right, so I'm just going to recap. So the first lesson is run your own financial race. And then it's never too late to understand and change your relationship with money. I like that. It's never too late. That's something I really believe in as well. More money doesn't lead to more happiness. Don't believe anyone who tells you that it will. We have now some good people in the room who have dealt with a lot of different clients with a lot of different financial situations. And you can actually say more money, not more happiness. And structure. Structure is so important to build the right financial habits. So the more load you can take off your mind, the better condition you'll be in. And also the tortoise and the hare, we know that the tortoise wins the race. Don't look for a short windfall. Don't put it all on black. Don't think that the next crypto is going to change your life. And even if it did, right, you'd probably blow through the cash if you weren't putting those systems in place to look after it in the long term.
And or if you did have a significant windfall, it's not all roses. It's going to come with its own sense of financial responsibility, fears and pressures as well.
Ryan, it was so nice to have a proper chat with those. I mean, you've had a really interesting career and you've been doing this for a long time. So thank you for sharing some of your life lessons.
Thanks. Thanks, Steph.
And thanks as well for everyone who's listening. And remember to follow this podcast so you never miss an episode. Advice given in this podcast is general in nature and is not intended to influence decisions about investing or financial products. Our listeners should always seek their own professional advice that considers their own personal circumstances before making any financial decisions.